Welcome to Anatomy and Physiology. We're going to start off with an overview of the human body, sort of an orientation. The objectives of this particular lecture are to help you define anatomy and physiology, describe the principle of complementarity, put in order the levels of organization, list and give the function of the organ systems of the body, describe the necessary life functions and survival needs for human life, distinguish between negative and positive feedback mechanisms, list the parts of a feedback mechanism, define homeostasis, and describe how loss of homeostasis leads to disease. Let's get started. Anatomy is the study of the structure of the body parts. Physiology is a study of the function of the body parts. And this brings us to that concept of complementarity. Basically, form and function go together. The stomach is shaped kind of like a holding tank because it serves as a holding tank. And as we go through the various organ systems, you'll see that things are formed the way they are so that they can carry out the function they need to carry out. There are three essential concepts. One, everything has structural organization. Complementarity, that is, form and function must go hand in hand. And homeostasis, the maintenance of balance. Let's look at the levels of organization from simplest to most complex. In the next chapter, you're going to look at a little bit of chemistry, because there are certain basic chemicals that are found in all living things and certain molecules that are very consistent with living things. These molecules come together and form cells. Now, cells are the smallest living thing. Cells will organize themselves into groups with similar functions that are called tissues. And different tissues will organize to make organs. Organs will be put together to make organ systems, and all of the organ systems make a functioning organism. Let's look at this example. Carbon and hydrogen and oxygen combine to make some of the molecules that are necessary to form cells. This is a smooth muscle cell. Now, several smooth muscle cells will come together to make up smooth muscle tissue. This will be the tissue level. And then when more than one tissue gets together, in this case we have epithelial tissue and muscle tissue and connective tissue, we can form an organ. In this case, the organ we've formed is a blood vessel. This blood vessel works with the heart and all the other blood vessels in the body to help circulate blood. So this is an organ system. And the circulatory system is one of the 11 systems that make up the human organism. The major organ systems of the body are the Integumentary System, Skeletal System, Muscular System, Nervous System, Endocrine System, Cardiovascular System, Lymphatic System, Respiratory System, Digestive System, Urinary System, and Reproductive System. Consider that your preview of coming attractions. Let's look just a little bit at each one. The Integumentary System is your skin, your hair, and your nails. Now, it protects you, it acts as an excretory organ, it's how you know things that are going on outside your body, it's your organ of sensation. The skeletal system are all the bones and the joints of the skeletal system. The bones help support your body and offer some protection. They're also a wonderful storage place for your calcium. The muscular system, usually we're just talking about the skeletal muscles and the tendons that help hold them to the bones. They function so that you can move. The nervous system is composed of the brain and the spinal cord and the nerves. The nervous system is a communication system. It very rapidly informs all parts of your body about things it needs to do and things that are going on. Not only that, but your brain and to a certain extent your spinal cord take in sensory information, interpret it, and allow you to respond to it. So you respond to various stimuli. The endocrine system is closely related to the nervous system. The endocrine system is a series of glands that are scattered throughout the body. The thyroid and the pancreas, the ovaries and the testes, the pituitary gland are probably some you've heard of before. Like the nervous system, it's a communication system, but it's a very slow-acting communication system. These glands produce hormones that act as chemical messengers to various cells in your body, telling these cells when it's time to grow or divide or secrete something. But it may take hours, days, before your communication system sets up all of the networks it needs to for those cells to respond. So it's a slower acting communication system than your nervous system. The cardiovascular system is the heart and all of the blood vessels. This is a transportation system. It is in the blood that the oxygen gets carried to your cells and the nutrients get carried to your cells, and the carbon dioxide and the waste products get carried away. Now, some of the cells of the blood also serve to protect you from infection and blood loss. The lymphatic system, again, is some organs that are kind of scattered around the body. There is a system of vessels called lymphatic vessels. The lymphatic system is usually referred to as your immune system. It has a strong immune function, and as such, it protects you from disease. Now, as we get into talking about the circulatory system and how some of those nutrients get to the cells, we'll find out that a little bit of fluid leaves the blood and stays in the tissue, and that fluid becomes lymph. Now, if we didn't have some way of getting that lymph out of the tissues, you would soon blow up like a tick and explode. So the lymphatic vessels collect that fluid and return it back to the bloodstream. The respiratory system will be the lungs and the trachea and all of these structures in your throat. This one is how you exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide. The digestive system, the esophagus, the stomach, the intestines, helps you break down food into particles that your cells can use, absorb the nutrients, and helps you get rid of anything you didn't digest and didn't need. The urinary system, the kidneys, the ureter, the urinary bladder, and the urethra filter your blood to remove metabolic waste. Also, it helps you maintain water and salt balance, and it helps you maintain the pH of your blood. The reproductive system, in the male that will be the testes, in the female that will be the ovaries, and of course all of the accessory structures, functions to produce offspring, make more people. Okay, let's try a little quiz. Of the following, the simplest level of organization is the tissue, cell, organ, or organ system. I hope y'all picked cell because that is the simplest. The only thing simpler in the organizational scheme would be chemicals. All of these things, the tree, the paramecium, the cat and the monkey, and even you, have something in common. You're all living. So what are the things that make you alive? What do we look for when we are trying to determine if something is dead or alive? Well, one of the things is that all living things maintain boundaries. Even a cell has a definite inside of the cell and an outside of the cell, and they control what enters and leaves through those boundaries. All things display some sort of movement. It may be very slow, it may be very subtle, but even plants turn their leaves to the sun to pick up more energy. Everything can respond to its environment, move toward pleasant, move away from unpleasant, move toward food, move away from toxins. All things are capable of taking in larger molecules and somehow breaking them down into smaller molecules that they can use. All things use those molecules to make some form of energy so that they can grow and make molecules that they need. It's obvious that if you're going to be digesting and metabolizing, there must be some leftover stuff you have to get rid of, and all living things have to be able to get rid of these toxins and these things that they don't really need. And it's important that all living things make more of themselves. All living things have some form of reproduction. And finally, all living things have some form of growth. They may get larger individually, or they may increase in cell numbers. So what do you need to survive? Well, obviously you need nutrients to fuel that metabolism and growth. Humans need oxygen. Not all living things need oxygen, but humans do. Everything needs water. And you must maintain an appropriate body temperature for your chemical reactions to go on. Too cold, molecules don't collide with each other often enough for molecules to interact. Too hot, you start to denature proteins. And believe it or not, you need a certain amount of atmospheric pressure for gases to exchange between the lungs and the blood. This is why they pressurize airplanes when you go above 10,000 feet, so that you have that adequate pressure for gas exchange. All right, the concept of homeostasis. Homeostasis is maintaining an equilibrium. While our external environment changes constantly, our internal environment has to remain the same. If it doesn't, we're going to be in trouble. And that's the concept of homeostasis, this balancing act to maintain an internal equilibrium. In order to do this, we have things that are called homeostatic control mechanisms to help us maintain our equilibrium. There is some condition, some variable that is monitored, so there has to be a receptor for this stimulus. The receptor sends information to a control center somewhere in your body. And the control center is always looking at this information and going, is this normal? Is this abnormal? If everything's normal, nothing happens. But if things start to get a little out of balance, then the control center informs an effector, and the effector is going to influence the condition, keeping it in check. So let's look at this. Some variable sends its information to a receptor. As it gets out of balance, the control center sends information to an effector to bring it back into balance. So the whole deal is to keep things balanced. So let's look at that one more time. Your condition or your stimulus is fed into a control center which monitors the stimulus. If necessary, a change in the stimulus will trigger an effector that will modify the condition, and that information will continually be sent to the control center. So the control center knows, are we up or are we down? What do we need to do? Now there are two types of feedback mechanisms. The most common one is the negative feedback system. When something goes up, the effector causes it to go down. So it's like a seesaw. The less common is the positive feedback system. In this case, when the stimulus starts to increase, the feedback mechanism causes it to increase even more. Now the reason there are very few positive feedback mechanisms is because there's got to be some sort of off switch, or else positive feedback mechanisms just go on forever. With negative feedback systems, you're teeter-tottering up and down and up and down, so they're their own control. Let's look at this negative feedback mechanism that you might be a little more familiar with, your thermostat in your house. You set your thermostat at, say, 70 degrees. Now, usually your thermostat somewhere in there doesn't keep the house exactly at 70 degrees, but within an acceptable range, maybe 68 to 72. So, the thermostat reads that you've gone down to, you're a little too cold. The thermostat is your control center. You're a little too warm. Turns off the heat. You cool down. You get too cold. Turn on the heat. Go back up. Get too hot. Turn off the heat. Get too cold. Turn on the heat. So you've got this constant up and down going on. That's a negative feedback mechanism. Now here's one that's in your body. Your blood glucose should stay between about 70 and 110 milligrams per deciliter. But let's say about 10 o'clock you eat a Snickers bar. Well, that's going to shoot your blood glucose up to about 180 milligrams per deciliter pretty fast. That's a little too high. So the control center that's paying attention to glucose tells your pancreas to secrete some insulin. Insulin moves that glucose into your cells and out of your blood, so your blood glucose goes back down like it should. Now, let's say you skip lunch. It's like 2 o'clock, and your blood glucose, as a result, has dropped a little below normal. It's down about 60 milligrams per deciliter. This tells the control center that it needs to put some glucose back into your blood, so it tells the pancreas to secrete a different hormone, a hormone called glucagon. And glucagon goes to glucose stores in your body, releasing glucose into your blood, so your blood glucose goes back up. So this goes on all day long. This could work the same way for blood pressure, heart rate, calcium levels in your blood. Anything you can think of is regulated by some sort of mechanism like this. Now here's a positive feedback mechanism. If there's a tear in a blood vessel and blood starts to leak out, it begins a positive feedback cycle. Platelets start to stick together and they release chemicals that cause blood to coagulate. Platelets keep sticking, more chemicals get released, platelets keep sticking, more chemicals get released. This keeps going on until we plug the hole and we stop the blood flow. Now, once the blood is no longer flowing, we turn this mechanism off. If we didn't, all of your blood would clot. Solid blood does not pump well. Homeostatic imbalance is simply another way of saying disease. There are 2 basic things that happen to cause homeostatic imbalance. One is aging. With aging, you lose the efficiency of your feedback mechanisms. The control center is not quite as sharp as it used to be. It drifts a little bit. It lets things get a little higher or a little lower before it responds. Sometimes this can cause problems. The other kind of disease is the true pathological condition, where something happens and there's a loss of feedback. The control center is damaged, the receptors are damaged, the effector is damaged, but somewhere along the line, some part of that homeostatic mechanism is not working at all. This is when we frequently have to go in and do some replacement therapy, like giving a drug. So, just a little overview. Complementarity means that structure and function go hand in hand. Things are the shape they are because of the function they perform. The body has very definite structural organization: chemical, cellular, tissues, organs, organ systems, organism. And homeostasis is that balance of internal environment through those control mechanisms. Mostly negative feedback, but sometimes positive feedback. All right. The transportation of nutrients to cells is a function of which system? Digestive, respiratory, circulatory, or none of the above? Remember, transportation is a circulatory system function. Digestion would be the breakdown of the nutrients, but circulation is how we're going to move them around the body. When you get hot, you sweat. Sweat evaporation cools you down. This is an example of homeostasis, negative feedback. Both A and B are correct. Neither A nor B are correct. It's homeostasis and it's a negative feedback mechanism. Homeostasis because you're maintaining body temperature. Negative feedback because when you get hot, you do something to cool you down. This is also a real important reason to read test questions all the way through before you answer, because if you only read the A and go, oh, it's homeostasis, and didn't read the rest of them, you would have missed the answer even though you probably knew the answer to the question.